How's it going, everybody? So, we're going to be going back into the PlayStation 5 reveal. Starting with the scene file, if you go into the stream from the 17th. Jabraham, how's it going, Jeff? We're going to be Skid Viz. Good to see you again. If you find the old VOD, or if you're in the Discord, you go to the archived stream from the 17th. We'll be starting with the last file of version 3 from that directory, or that upload, and going to be cleaning up a bit of the mess that we kind of left. I guess I'm the only one responsible for it. A bit of that mess, we're going to look into better ways to create these shapes, just polishing stuff kind of, and also some other techniques to represent some of these grains. Maxime wants to know my location. Isn't he in Russia? The guy responsible for making this? But he's, I guess it's still under investigation whether his studio was actually working on it, but he's 100% responsible for creating that look and effect and everything. We'll get his page back up here as well. So he did a bunch of other explorations and stuff like that as well, even way before the PlayStation was released. So even this is like the exact same shots, pretty much, from that thing. So one of the that was one of the first you saw when you were getting into Dini. Yeah, he's done like a really good job of just polishing this kind of look and creating something that's like very distinct and unique and everything. Like he's definitely not copying off of anyone else. Even his older work, like I think some of this stuff is from like 10 years ago or something, but he's always been like, this one's like 11 years ago, and this is something that like someone could make today and it would be amazing. This kind of optical illusion type stuff, or I don't know. This one's a lot more Kubrick, like 2001 or something like that. But yeah, he's the god. So I'm gonna look a little bit more into some of these other techniques, like I think it was Corignan. I hope I'm saying that right. He was pointing out last time in Maxime's reference, it's probably set up a little bit differently than the way I was setting things up, where these guys are all kind of riding on top of a deforming surface, whereas what I was doing, or some of these references, it looks like these are being like held back by invisible collisions or something like that. So we'll look into some other techniques to change the way that these things are sitting or being moved around and simulated. Maybe some stuff like kind of how they have it at the end. I was watching this earlier today and it's a bit odd, like, let me try to find the segment. Looks like towards the end, I don't know if they got lazy or something, but they're just like, some of those just like start turning off or disappearing or something like that. It's a bit it's a bit odd. Like, I don't know if they're just getting lost in like there's definitely ones that just turn off or something, but they're just fading, like they just fade out over a few frames. It's a little, I don't know. You'd think that it would be better just to shrink them down, or actually have them travel to their like final location, but I'm feeling that they got into a bit of a rush, or I don't know what happened at the end. This last shot is they just used a bunch of crossfades and stuff like that, and it looks a little odd on their part. Daul. Yeah, so I also updated, you should see it with the subscriber badges. You should have these wrangle hats. Long Walk Dathan, how's it going? This could also be like a Dyson product film, like the the fans that Dyson makes or whatever. It's like the same kind of color scheme. It's like the glowing blue on black or whatever. Trying to find a... Whoops. It's kind of like that. They're bladeless fans or whatever with exhaust stuff or whatever. So we'll get back into our scene. Like I said, I'm just going to be starting with the version 3 from the 17th. So we have the environment pretty much set up. What we'll do right now is just do some optimization type stuff. First thing I'm going to do is just move this stuff around. No, I don't have a randomizer. I updated my splash screen today just to change it up or to switch it up or whatever. I've thought about making the splash screen randomizer before, but it's, I don't know. I just tend to set one for a few weeks or something until I get bored of it and change it. So we'll just look at, like, I don't know, I guess it just makes the most sense to start where we were. So there's this Voronoi stuff that we did to originally create like our collision stuff. So this is used as an invisible wall or invisible ground plane pretty much. And what happens is we ended up like trying to switch this out eventually with the alternate workflow that was our font SOP that was being projected into the height field and everything. So that's what we were starting with these inputs, and then this is our main vellum sim. But one of the things that I was saying was that we're like switching spaces and transforms and stuff like that a bit too much. So I'm just gonna start kind of anew, and we'll work things out that way, just to clean things up or whatever. It's like this was getting too big, and then we were just working in like a small area, and it was getting confusing whether we were flipped up or down or anything like that. So we'll get started again. I'm just going to, usually what I do, like coming back to a R&D file or an old scene or anything that I'm picking up again, or even just like, I don't know, making progress on, like I'll just kind of rebuild stuff. That way you can find like inefficiencies or I don't know, things that you were unmotivated to fix originally, you'll spend the time to fix them this time around. So I was thinking these things should be even skinnier, such that they're pretty much just like lines almost. I think, let's see. I don't know if this is there's a few different things that we could do. I don't know if sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. Like, these aren't in the right order. Sometimes I do just like a sort with random to try to get lucky. Like, it will sort things in the right manner sometimes. And then I think I can just blast that one out. So we have a simple outline X or whatever now that's the kind of skeleton or center lines from our original X. I think this will be a little bit more like the reference. I should have left that that folder open so I could go back to the video. So I'll just grab that real quick. So like when they had these things, I was kind of realizing that like they appear like they have some thickness maybe, but I believe that's just being caused by the grains like rolling off of it and kind of acting like a peak stop would, or like an inflation or whatever. But I think the underlying forces driving it is just lines, because that's one thing I noticed, like with our attempt at it, we were getting too much of like a flat shape or whatever. So I'll just do this step. And then let's look at our world, because like this was the other thing that was pretty frustrating, was like we were working along the z-axis, like we were treating a different axis as like our up vector or whatever. So it's always like not a good idea to work like that for a long time. Sometimes you have to do it just because you're in a pinch, or you're like have to deliver something, or you're just working quickly, but it's always better to set things up the right way, and then it's just less confusing. So we have, this will be our up direction, and we'll work like this back wall is the flat wall or whatever. So we'll be moving things around in the X direction. So we have another height field. And then this is what I mean. So we're working along the YZ plane, and then X will be the depth or the height essentially. And then I think like 10 by 10 was kind of where we settled for the ground and everything like that. And then if I just, I can turn that other stuff off for now. If I look at this, we're kind of flipped around. So we might just want to rotate the height field to be 180 degrees flipped around. So now our height values are going towards the camera. So that's good. And then our grid, I think we can get rid of that and just scatter. See if we can, doesn't like it. So if I just do convert, then I think I can scatter. It's probably a better idea just to do height field convert, Both of them will work, but I don't know, this one's a little bit more proper or whatever. I'm just gonna kind of rearrange more stuff. All right, let's see where we are. So this will just make it easier because we can always look through our camera to visualize stuff even as we're setting things up, instead of like before we had to go to the final end chain that was after a simulation and a bunch of other stuff. So I just need to do a transform here, get these things lined up. So it looks like maybe you see 6 or 7 of those at once. And they're a little bit bigger, so we just need less. And maybe we were closer to where they were before. So that should be pretty good. And then that stuff was like extra stuff we were doing for the height field project. It's Arma. How's it going? So I'm trying to think. It's possible we don't want these completely flat or skinny like skeletons, but I'm just gonna try something and see how it works out. So we've used like the ray SOP in the past to do projections and then just measure the distance from it. We can do a similar thing with Vex. The reason I'm doing that instead of with the ray SOP right now is because I want to do the same operation but using height fields. So if I do find a distance, you can do that using the XYZ dist Vex function. This works pretty much the same way that the ray SOP does. So the first argument that you give it is the input number. So we'll just do 1 to get things from this input. And then the next one is the like search location. So starting from this position, the current position of the height field, find me the distance to the nearest X, essentially. And then you have to give it some extra arguments that it will store values in. So it will store the primitive number of the geometry it hits or finds, and then the primitive UV. So these are extra variables that you need to define. I just do int pn for primitive number and vector pu for primitive UV. And then if we put that distance, the dist variable into the height field, we can visualize it. So you just do f at height, because this has other mask and height. It has other volumes and stuff like that, but this, to visualize it, we just put it into the height. So something happened, but it's not too clear. Our height field right now is a pretty low resolution. Like the grid spacing is too high. We're working 10 by 10, and then we just have like a 5 by 5 texture, essentially. Super low resolution. So just do 0.1. Then It's getting a little bit closer to what those X's look like. Might switch to bi-axis, and then we do maybe 512 is working all right. So hopefully this makes sense. If I do a similar thing with this, I can kind of show you what I was saying, which like a visualization. So I'm doing the same thing with a height field, but because it's a volume, I have to do the wrangle. But if we were doing this to polygons, basically what I'm doing is finding the minimum distance, but it gets all crinkled up like that, because this is actually moving things like in 3D to the nearest surface that they find. So instead of, we'll turn off transform points and we'll do, just give me the intersection distance, which gives you this value. And then if I just did transform or translate like X plus that dist, I think I have to do minus, it's going the other way. Then we have the same result. So hopefully, I don't know if that makes it easier or harder to understand, but that's basically what I'm doing. But to do it with height fields, we have to do this in a wrangle. Because I think if I did the height field project, it's like a somewhat similar operation, but because it's just surfaces, it isn't finding like the nearest, it isn't storing the distance. Essentially, it's actually trying to do more of what this thing was doing with the transform. Like it's trying to move everything to the nearest position. So I'm just going to get rid of that other letter for now. And then with this noise, this one we were using to move things around. We might be, you can see we're getting like some rounding, like some thickness and stuff like that. We can try leaving it in for right now, but we might want to eventually do just like flatten everything to the same distance. So if I just scale X to 0, basically what that's doing is just flattening all of these points that might be closer or further from our like gallery wall. We're snapping them so that all of these floating X's or floating shapes will be stuck or lined up close to where our height field or wall is. So when we do that, then we get the crisp shapes. It looks like this one we might have the same problem. We should be doing negative numbers. Then we can get our grains and stuff like that rolling along the things. So this dist, XYZ dist function is pretty powerful. You can do a lot of interesting stuff with it. We might get into some like procedural noise functions and stuff like that later on if we make more patterns. So instead of doing 12, if I just do 1x, like you can see that this value goes through the wall eventually, because when it gets far enough away, it pushes things back. So instead of setting things directly to the distance value, if you do like a sine wave of the distance, then it will be like a rolling kind of wave. You can increase the frequency of the wave, and then you have some interesting thing like this. It's kind of like a fan, or I don't know, some ripples or something. And And then you can even start to offset time, and maybe if we do frame, it will be a little faster. This is just incrementing by frame numbers instead of seconds. So then you can see it's like sucking everything in. If we subtract by it, then it's pushing everything out. So it's pretty cool. You do a lot of things with these functions and procedural noises and stuff like that. So we were doing 12. Maybe that's a little too many. Maybe we want to do relax, I don't know. We might also want to tweak this this function around a little bit. And then we can change the angle of that slope just by scaling the distance. So if I divide it by 4, that will make the slope like 4 times less steep, essentially. We could do the other thing and like multiply by 4, and then it would become 4 times more steep. So those are some other controls that we have. So maybe dividing by 2 might be nice. I don't know, I kind of think that this is a nicer effect when we're not flattening everything. Or some of them kind of come into focus and come out of focus like that. So I'll just save this. We'll start a new directory for today. What is this? 6? Whoops. 20. And then we'll just keep going versions up or whatever. So this will be version 4. I'm just going to separate everything out a little bit more. We'll just move our grain thing over. So we were always using second input here, or the index 1, as our terrain object. And then we just need to set up our vellum object again. So this time we want everything to be riding on top. So we'll try to scatter things just on top of the surface at the start, and then we'll have gravity going this direction, which will be positive x in this case. So we can do another convert height field. So this just goes from the volume kind of texture-based representation to polygonal geometry representing it. So this one, it's like voxels that have a value that's the height distance, and then this is actually points and polygons and stuff like that. So I'm doing that so I can do poly extrude and then eventually the vellum source. So distance, we probably don't want to use extrusion distance because that will move things along their normals. So it kind of has like, maybe it's not doing it. Like we get some interpenetrations and stuff like that there. So that might cause like just things poking through each other and stuff like that. That might cause some problems. So I'm just going to switch to transform extruded front, and then instead of working in local space, we can do global. It's kind of like world space or object space. So now I can just set this to be a certain distance away, and we know that it will never penetrate itself or anything like that. So this is like our shell or our layer, like a blanket of grains that we're gonna make to lay on top of our height field. So I'll do output back just so we have a full shape. And then we can go back over here, get our grains. We also probably want to keep that rest. If you guys remember, we were using this rest to make like a frozen copy. What the hell is going on? Basically stashing or freezing our point position so we could use it to stick procedural textures or things like that too after the simulation. I'm just going to get rid of that for right now. If we need it, we can add it, but it adds a little bit of an expense to things. So if I middle mouse button right here, you could see just like we have all these attributes, and basically the more data you attach to the points, the bigger the memory footprint and stuff will be. So it's not always the best idea to keep stuff around if you don't need it. So we have these. If we wanted to, we could copy spheres too, just to visualize it, like this, the size of everything. And then there's also this sprite material you can use. I'm not a big fan of the sprite material because it doesn't respond to lights and stuff like that, but sometimes it's nice just to have a visualization of the... You can also do it with the disk in the display option. This should be okay for right now. So we have an issue here. Just gonna keep, I guess I don't need that. That was our pop limit that we were, like I said before, just switching spaces was causing a bunch of confusions and stuff like that. So this time, with our limit, we want X is like this direction. It doesn't really matter, but the other ones we probably want 10 by 10. That's like our gallery wall dimension or whatever. And then our force, instead of gravity being regular, Earth, we're kind of doing like an artificial anti-gravity or whatever. And we're going to be basically pushing everything in the positive X direction with the same scale as Earth gravity or whatever. So I'm just gonna give this a play, see what happens. It's looking already pretty pretty interesting, better than probably we ended with last time. Yeah, it's like just taking some steps to reconfigure or simplify stuff can be a good process or whatever, where you just cut out your stupid hacks or, I don't know, like cheats or shortcuts that you took last time. You were like, I should fix this, but I don't want to do that right now. Just taking the time to clear all that stuff up can make a big difference. Usually like start of the day is a good time to do it, or after a break or something like that, so you have like fresh eyes. So it's also a lot faster because we're just doing the shell. Like this is if you guys have ever used the flip solver, they have something called the narrow band that side effects somewhat recently implemented or whatever. Sometimes it works like for oceans and things like that, but we're kind of doing more of what that process is doing, where you only simulate a thin layer of particles along the surface of the shape. So for certain situations, it works better than others. Like if I wanted this guy to completely get hit by a bullet or something and like explode, then we would need to represent particles inside of him. But if it was like boats, little sailboats, like traveling along the surface of him, all we're interested in is like the waves and stuff like that. Like here, just the detail or just the interesting stuff you see on the surface. So one issue right here is that we're able to see through the wall a little bit. I don't necessarily think it's the box. Like if I hide the other objects, we can see everything now. So it's just, we should probably fix this because I just spent a lot of time saying what a better idea it is to fix things than leave them be. But basically we're just working too close to the wall so things can go through it, if that makes sense. So the best way to fix this is probably maybe just up here. This is like how far we want to treat it. Like you can see here, I don't know, can you? I don't know, they like stop their light cove. It's a little bit of a weird architecture or something. But it's just like how much space you imagine to be between there and the wall, or maybe it goes on forever. I don't really know. But that's basically what we're deciding right here. So we could do one. It's usually the best idea to fix things as early as possible. Otherwise, like what happened last time, I was just doing all the reposition space changes, and it just gets confusing when you have like something and then you rotate it later on and then you rotate it again and so forth or whatever. So we go back into the camera now, and that's how we could solve that issue of things being in the corner. So we might, let me get this back up again. So I'm just going to do like a side-by-side here to kind of see what, go to the X's, what kind of, looks like they have a little bit more like resolution than we do. Like maybe their spheres are a quarter or an eighth of the size of ours. So that changes a lot of things because it just visually makes this surface appear flatter, because there's just less, like the curvature of the spheres or whatever is smaller. It's less like a ball pit and like closer to a soundbox or something like that. So we should probably go in and change that. So just on our grain size. So this depends. Sometimes I'll just do division like that, so I know I'm doing a clear divide by 4. So now we have 6 million. Might be, we might have gone too small. Let me examine this. We have a few options. Either I went too small or we're just doing too thick of a bandwidth. So maybe we'll just try half. That's feeling a little bit better. We're doing less, under 1 million now. So just gonna rearrange my scene. Just do a flip book. You do the full range. just to kind of see where we're at. So it seems like this is going pretty quick. The grain solver or the vellum solver still uses OpenCL, so it's a good, it's pretty quick in that sense. If I do watch NVIDIA SMI, and with this watch, this will just keep issuing this command every interval. So this will say every 0.5 seconds run this command, which shows me my GPU usage. So it looks like I have Houdini set to use this Quadro RTX, and then this one I'm just using for the display. It was messing up my OBS before when I was like just doing everything with one graphics card. So this seems like I'm not dropping frames and stuff anymore. But this is sometimes you just want to make sure you're not killing you're filling up your GPU memory or VRAM or whatever. So it looks like we spent 1 minute for 1 second of animation. We're getting a lot of more interesting detail and stuff like that. You're gonna move to Linux? I've seen people on Reddit discussing the move to Linux regarding visual effects and that kind of stuff. I don't know. It seems like if there was ever a time, it would be now. You have more control. I think I've talked about it before, but like if you have Houdini that's crashing or something like that, you can list your Houdini processes or any processes or things like that. So I can even see like if you open your scenes through the command line, then it will remember which process ID goes with which scene. So even if you have multiple Houdinis open, you could find, like which process ID you're killing will correspond to it. They also have just more commands like this kill to signal a process. If you use the if you use a certain signal to kill your process, I don't see it here. Usually I just type in segv in all caps or whatever. Then Houdini will usually save a crash file. Like it will do its best to do the backup or whatever in the temporary directory. The Halloween documents. Yes. So I was bringing that up last time, but that was basically Microsoft in the 90s or whatever, like conspired against the Unix developers and things like that to kind of like, if you're a big software company, you can create proprietary tools and things like that that will block like open source development or just make it frustrating as a user for us or whatever. Is the cache manager showing the GPU usage? Are you talking about this blue bar as the cache manager? Or are you talking about there's like a window cache manager in the Houdini UI? Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a time commitment and a learning process and things like that. And it just depends, like a lot of the facilities I was working at was using Linux. So it just became something I got used to. If you're just starting out with Houdini, like it's probably better just to get a handle on Houdini itself before you start mucking around with Linux, because it's easy, like when you're just starting out with 3D, to waste a bunch of time like installing different plugins, installing different renderers, installing different operating systems, and then you haven't actually used the software, made anything interesting or whatever. I'm not sure about that cache manager. I can open it after this, but I don't think so. Especially like regarding OpenCL usage. There's a like Houdini environment variable that will print out OpenCL usage, but it's a little bit just ugly in the way that it does it. So I've always preferred this thing just because it's more clear. Like I can even tell if a different application is eating up a ton of GPU memory, or this is like the cores, like the percentage of your cores that you're using, or basically like how hard it's working. So I don't know. I just always trust that one, I guess, the most. Ubuntu is okay. This one I'm using here, the Linux Mint, it's kind of meant for beginners, or it's like just easy. I think they're on like 19.3 now, but the install is pretty easy. You could just get something like, it's like Windows 2000 or I don't even know. But yeah, it doesn't do like the auto updates and kill your renders and restart in the middle of the night, or all the other problems and stuff like that. It doesn't matter too much, I would say, like the distribution. It's more for personal choices and things like that. I think they do have this thing called VFX Reference Platform that, I don't know, this is probably a little bit too technical, but basically there's like certain Linuxes that should be supported or something like that. Like if you use one that's not very commonly used, or there's like some bizarre ones you can find and stuff like that they don't have all the libraries and things like that. So it's best, like Ubuntu is a good starting point just because it's the easiest to install stuff. You don't have to like compile or do like third-party stuff or whatever. So it looks like we're kind of having some problems where things are just flattening out a bit too much. So I stopped the simulation. Let's take a look at that cache manager. Maybe this is, I did the wrong thing, I think. I did the code viewer. Cache manager. I think this is just RAM. I don't think it's ever GPU. And then OpenGL is a little bit different than OpenCL. Like they're using different caches and stuff like that. So I wouldn't, I was using this a little bit at first, but I kind of lost faith in it eventually. Like, why is this at 303%? It's a little suspect. I don't know. So these things we're flattening out a little too much. So maybe we have like too many X's. Basically, the less of those that we make, the more like slopes. If you have too many of them, everything will be like a flat surface kind of. So we'll go back, maybe try 6 of them. And then with this division, that was another way we were changing the slope of everything. Once we start to see the wall poke through again, that either means we need to add some more X's back, or we would need to like extend the wall out a little bit more. We could also do like a function to remap this kind of stuff so that it never falls behind the wall. Like it would just clamp off at a certain level. And then there's also like shaping functions that we could do if we wanted to get really specific, like sharp and then gradual roll off or stuff like that. But I think for right now we should be okay. Just trying this again. So I think actually what I might do is in my simulation, let me just go back to the first frame. It takes a while to set up at first because you have to so I think it just makes the most sense to do it here. So I'm setting my height to this, but I can also do this maximum function. Basically, it uses the higher, whichever value of these two inputs that you give it is higher. So if I do like maximum of the actual height and -1, then you can see it's sloped or capped everything right there. If I do like 1.5, then I'm at that wall. It looks like maybe this is a good territory or range to be in. So I was thinking about fixing that in the simulation with my pop limit node, but then I realized like my distributions of shapes would be off. Like I would still have gaps of missing area or whatever. We could try maybe doing a thinner shell now that we're simulating more points. So you could see like visually nothing really changed, but we look here, we're doing a thinner gap area, and instead of doing like 700,000, we're now doing just 250 or 270,000. So I'll do this with another flipbook, and we should be much faster. Like before, the last time we did it was taking 24 frames every minute. And this time it looks like we're, I don't know, probably a quarter of the time, or working a lot more quickly. This might be some areas that were too thin. You see some gaps or something maybe. Or it could be that our wall is flat in certain areas. We might want to preserve some of that slope. So I'm just gonna go in here and also change some other stuff. I think our velocity dampening, this is kind of like a drag. It might just be too high. So let's change this slope a little bit. So now we should just have some still pretty gradual areas. We'll try this again. So I'll get some water, I'll be right back. Hopefully this one's a little bit better than the last one. Uh-oh. Looks like that drag, we have a little, we don't have enough drag now. So you kind of see how that's changing like the scale of everything. Something like this might be desirable, like what they were getting towards the end of everything with, once these things were, some of them you could, I think, override the drag with a point attribute and get them to individually fling off like that, but for right now it's just kind of breaking the scale of everything. Like it feels like we're just looking down at a little box of sand that you're shaking or something like that, instead of like in there. We used that Tommy guy earlier or whatever, but like last stream, but I'm envisioning a human to be only like this tall. So this stuff would be like styrofoam, or it just doesn't look right for the scale. So I think I was at like 0.7, so I might just try 0.4, kind of like split the difference. Do you have any info about 64-bit precision sim? Is it even a common thing? I've asked the developers of like side effects and stuff before, and they've This was a long time ago, so it might have changed, but they were basically saying like only if you're working at a really small scale or with a lot of geometry. Generally, I would think you don't need to use it. Is it if it's on by default? I wouldn't really change it though. Like, I don't think you get a substantial speed up from turning it on or off. Alex, how's it going? So I think our new drag value is a little bit better. Some weird stuff happening at the top there. I don't know if maybe our X's are moving, most of them are moving too fast maybe or something. I think this, yes, I reworked the height field setup, so we're just doing these, it's kind of like a procedural noise where we're like stamping little decals or textures or whatever. So I think my amplitude in the height direction or this direction was too much. So these guys were like flinging in and out and popping stuff on and off too much. Like basically in this X direction they were lifting off or going on too, like some of those are a bit too quick. So we could even change that, like if we make the pulse duration longer, that slows down the overall motion of everything. I might just go a little bit bigger with these spheres for right now. And increase the shell distance, like the thickness of this. So this is the PlayStation 5 like recreation or whatever that we were doing. If people are just coming in, that we were doing on the 17th, and I'm just optimizing it, reworking things, and fixing like some of the glaring errors that were at the end of it. So this is starting to feel a little bit more closer to the reference. Just the way that the speed that everything's shifting around at and all that stuff. It seems like, I don't know if they're doing something special, but they might have like, they're doing a lot more slope that we want to probably try to figure out. It seems like some of these, I don't know if these angles are always the same. Like the size, some of the X's are smaller than others. Maybe the bigger ones are always like the furthest from the surface or closest to us. It looks like our physics are now behaving a lot closer to theirs in terms of like we're changing the drag, as well as just the total amount, like the size or the distribution of them feels a little bit closer to what they have now. So we'll try to figure out what's going on with their pattern. So if we do Would have been dope if they had the X's change in size constantly. Yeah, I don't know, there's a lot of interesting things that they could have done, even maybe some of them like rotating every once in a while or all that stuff. Is there a way to morph between noises? Felt like they did that in the PS reveal. Yeah, I mean, because we're doing height fields, all of these are just volumes or essentially textures. So it's super simple to blend between them. I think they even... I don't know if they have one directly for it. Let me see. Height field. I'm looking for like blend or something like that. But basically, I think you can use this sequence blend and it will support it. So if I just quickly do another copy to points, and then we'll just do a circle or something like they had for the O. And that will be what gets copied here. So this is what the time blend SOP is based off of. So they use this to interpolate between frames. Like if you're retiming stuff, you use this time blend and it will smoothly blend between two frames. Like if you're going from one frame to the next frame and remapping, stretching that out over 10 frames, this will do the blend, the interframe blend. And this thing is based off of the or geometry blend, but this one will also do volumes and stuff like that. So if we just plug it in, see if it doesn't work. So voxel blend, if you just do by grid index, this will do like a crossfade. So it depends if this is the ideal way that you want things to blend or not, but this would be the easiest way to do it. It's kind of like switching, like just fading between two textures, essentially, like two images in terms of the math and everything that it's doing. The other option, like if you don't want to do that type of blend, if you had these X's and O's and you just shifted them like one in front of the other, that would have kind of the same effect of like transitioning. But you could do a bunch of different things as well. We might try some of that later. So I was changing the size to get some smaller, some bigger. That's why everything changed colors for a minute. So yeah, of course. So by default, this will always change the color. If we just change it to P scale, this is like uniform scale, and like this will be uniformly distributed. We want maybe like a custom ramp. Maybe I'm gonna switch these to constant. So this way we'll just have two different sizes that we're dealing with basically. And then with this map, I can choose the distribution. So like 25% of them will be big like that. And then like, I don't know, 75%, or maybe this is closer to 1/3 or something, but it's just an easier way to visualize and change distributions and all that stuff. Whoops, I don't think I wanted to do that part yet. So we could try that. Like I was saying, it's possible that hard to tell. I don't know. I was thinking maybe like the smaller ones were always in front of the bigger ones, but it looks like this one's the closest to us or the closest to the camera. It's possible too. This was also like heavily art directed, like to get a very good looking frame. Sometimes you can't always just use the random, and you just have to manually place things. But we should be. We can check if we're closer with this. So this guy's getting a pretty good. See if flattening it out helps. All right, I have an idea. So instead of going completely flat, maybe we'll just do like 0.25 and let me try something here. Might be a bad idea. I don't know. I think it was a bad idea. So I was trying to do some kind of like exponential fall off. Like basically if you do a power function, then you can kind of reshape the slopes of these curves. So instead of rounding, I was just trying to make them straighter, essentially. I'm just going to get rid of that again. All right, let's try this. We'll do a scale of 0 again. And then just move them. So it looks like this value of -1, that gets us the pristine sharp X's. So it's possible, I'm gonna try this for now, but it's possible we want to have some that are slightly different distances from the wall. So basically this distances that they are from the height field is very important in getting this final shape for the slope to be the same, like angular and everything. I feel like it's just too hard to read what's happening, like when there's too many rounded ones. With the geometric stuff, I think it's a lot easier. They also have a little bit different here where all of these are like lines, where even in our situation this area here is round, so definitely just having sharp angles everywhere seems to be pretty successful for them. We'll see what happens. So we might have too many of them right now that are too small. Like this one here these two are taking up a third of the wall each time. Our wall is also a different size. I don't know if we should change that or continue. I think let's keep it a kind of a square, just so we're not 100% ripping them off. So I'm just going to do less X's so we have them bigger. Then it's usually just like too slow to work from the other, like after the extrude and grain conversion, those steps take a long time, so I don't want to do that each time. So this is that rounding that I was talking about, that it looks like what they were doing, they were getting like straight lines. But we'll give this a try. I might try increasing this gravity, kind of doubling it. We'll try another flip book. So I think to keep this pattern to be readable or like sharp, as these things are moving around, they're going a lot slower than we are too, but I think that's one of the reasons that we're kind of losing definition. I don't know, it's possible we have too much gravity and they're all collecting in the kind of in the valleys. Let's try less gravity. I might go just a little bit bigger again with these I'm gonna go back to closer to what we had before, a little bit bigger spheres and then a thicker extrusion. So we're definitely keeping more of the rigid pattern and shapes and stuff like that now. Getting some more stuff kind of raking. Pretty cool. It's a bit of a hole or a gap there. We do have some stuff up here that's like flinging off, but I think you can leave that in. There's certain areas of this where you see that kind of stuff happening. Like, I don't remember where it was. Kind of like this. It's like starting to expand. Pretty cool. It's like a growth, almost like fungus or something like that, like spreading. So if we want to fix some of those gaps, we could just make our shell, like our the thickness of the blanket of particles that we have, a little bit thicker. We might... It's possible that doing a different kind of gravity instead of like the straight force, if we're just attract things to the surfaces, that might be a better way to do things. I don't know if this one will support height fields though, so I'm going to hold off on. I'm not going to implement or try to use that. I'll just keep things the way that they are for now. So we're just gonna add more thickness, make the layer of particles bigger. Might want to make them a little bit smaller. So we're still below 500,000. We should be still simulating pretty fast. Yeah, so let's give this a try. So I feel like it's a delicate balance to like keep these rigid lines or geometric patterns, and then also have some areas here that are like collecting or sifting around or whatever. It looks like we filled in any of the gaps or the holes that we saw before. The Twitch compression is doing... Is it just like slamming all these? Let me see if I can take a look. Whoops. I feel like these particles don't compress that well, even like in this advertisement. They turn into a bit of a mush. So this, yeah, I guess it's a little bit hard to tell what's going on. Maybe this will compress better if I just zoom. Just work full screen. Maybe the sprites are also not compressing as well. It looks like we have a bit of a gap, maybe. Hard to tell again with these sprites whether it's just everything is gray. Yeah, I think we have some holes. It's also hard to know if like how long you can get away with the simulation like this. Like sometimes it will only look good for 10 frames or something, and you have to switch away from it. So I feel like, I don't know, but maybe let me take another look at this. But I feel like we need ours to sit on the surface better. Like maybe like gravity only applies to ones that are this far away from the wall. Let's give that a try and see what happens. So all of these shapes are at -1. This is where our origin is, 0. We're pushing stuff in the positive X direction. So I think with our, I'm just gonna really dial this back a little bit. Whoops, it's the wrong way. So let's just go up by 10. So I'm just going to change gravity around. I just want everything to behave pretty responsibly while I do that. So we could use vex expressions here. And then this parameter here, you can reference it just by the name that it is. So if I do force and multiply it times equal, we'll say like use the current value, but multiply it with this new number. Let's do at p.x is less than -1. So what this is doing is saying if the particles are past this line or this x position, then apply the gravity to them. If not, just let them kind of behave like anti-gravity. I might increase gravity just a little bit to really test it or prove it. So maybe that's clear. Let's see if it actually makes things look better now. So maybe instead of -1, we'll just do like a little bit. We're basically moving our gravity wall, shifting it away from the camera a little bit. I'm gonna try maybe not completely flattening these out, but letting them get a little bit further, or giving them a little bit of a buffer, essentially, so that they aren't all completely lined up with like the same height value. So let's go back to the high resolution. Then I'll just increase this thickness or shell amount a little bit more. We'll do another flipbook. So I have a feeling the method that I'm doing to generate these X's is a little bit not what they're doing. Seems like they have more of a hard surface, like base model or something like that they're working with that I've never completely nailed, like in my setup process. We tried the original like extrusion thing, and then we tried this. Both of them kind of had maybe some problems or issues or whatever. We'll see what happens with this. Maybe I don't need to focus too much on those little details. So let this simulate again. I'll get some water and be right back. So I think our sandbox style gravity, it's not helping us. We're still getting like a flat mush. So just turn off the vex expressions. Maybe I'll just stay with 2 for gravity and see what happens with that. I guess it's not really a gravity anymore, it's just more of a directional force. So it might be our speed as well, just like going too fast was causing problems. Kind of breaks the scale of everything as well. I don't know. we're hitting the wall again of like whether I should go back and rework things or just push forward with the current ones. So I'm just gonna go again, get us closer to where we were with the look. We'll grab our glow kind of color nodes that we were doing last time. So if you remember, we were basically taking the height field after it's like deformed and looking at the curvature of things and using that to make like a blue value, which got transferred to the particles after the simulation. And then using a noise to mask out or dim certain areas. So now it looks like the sort of like areas aren't getting picked up as well. One thing we can do is just with this attribute blur, if we blur our curvature value, let me see what happens. Nothing happens. Let me just make sure I'm spelling this right. Sometimes. Oh, okay, so this is a primitive attribute. So I might just try promoting curvature from primitive to point. And then on my color, I also need to be careful to correct that. Then I think my range was just a bit too high. It's possible this blur will decrease the range as it smooths it out. Yeah, Daul, thanks for stopping by. So now we have a much brighter area to start with. It's possible this blur is just a little bit too aggro. And then I think our range, we just want to get rid of those big splotches. Just really make it contrasty or whatever. And I think we also were trying to use this depth. I might set that up and then finish what we were planning to do with it. So what this is doing is measuring the distance to the height field or to the surface. So we can use this value to again mask the color. So if I just do color equals dist, then you can kind of see what's happening. Should be 0, like the distance is 0 units where it touches the wall, and then it gets brighter as it gets further away. We kind of want the opposite, so we can just remap this distance value using a fit function. It's just changing the range of things. So where 0, where it's touching the wall, and then like 0.2 where it's the furthest that we want to range things from. And then I'm going to flip the range around so it will be a value of 1. We just, sometimes I get a little bit too, it just gets harder to read or whatever when you have too many things in there. So now what we have is just remapping this range. So it's super bright within 0.2 units of the wall. Maybe we want a little bit blurrier of a value. And then instead of just overriding the color with this, you can just multiply it. Maybe we were a little bit better before. So what this is going to do is just say the starting points. This will always happen. This won't get stuck. This measurement will always be happening after the simulation. We might need to be a bit careful because like it's never going to let things like that happen where it just bleeds through. But let's just see what happens. So it looks like we're still getting some areas of bleed happening. You can get rid of some of these noises and just see what happens. Like I was layering things up last time because we were getting too bright, but we might want to keep it. Reduce the blur and just try to get some nice sharp areas. I think so. I need to be careful because I set this render flag, so I can just hold down the T key and click over here. That was something we had to do last time because we were working on all the different transforms and stuff. But I think this time it should be good. So it looks like we're not bright enough, or our range is a little bit messed up. Because these are actually points, and then these are being rendered with thickness. We're not picking up all of them. So what I can do is just change the distance that I'm ramping off of, like how close or far I am from the wall, and give that a try. So this is looking a little bit better. I don't know how somehow we're missing like that big swath. I'm also gonna try to get closer. I don't know if this is like a gamma. Like if they just really slammed the contrast or gamma down after. I think with my bottom floor here, if I actually make that darker, closer to 0, we'll get a bit closer to them in terms of dark values. And let me just see what I was doing with these walls. So the IOR is set to 1, so we shouldn't be getting any like reflections. It should just be bounce light that we're getting here. So that should be normal. I think one thing, it's a little bit better. It's it's a process. Like, I don't know, I need a few more iterations of going in, rethinking some areas and getting rid of clutter, but we're definitely in a better place. Like, this, a lot easier to look at and more fun to work with than what we were doing last time with like, let's try transforming, let's try rotating, and then we're rendering. I don't know. It's good to go in and declutter things like that. So the other thing I'm going to do with these walls, what was happening, let's just clear things up a little bit. So we made our little geometry replication or recreation of their architecture. This guy here was the roof. So what I'm going to do is just duplicate that off and then isolate the roof. And we just do this divide node. Instead of convex, you can use Bricker polygons, and this will just turn things into a grid, essentially, based off of the scale of different axes. So we should be able to kind of recreate this light cove or light pattern or whatever with it. So that looks close to what they had. Maybe they just have like 3 or 4 panels or something like that. And then I think this stuff, if we just do poly expand. Then this stuff will want to color it black as well. It's a little bit better. I don't know, I was hoping it would be, I think I messed up the underlying collision shape a little bit, but just keep going for now. So just set that to everything, all the primitives, or we don't want to use a group. I think I need to reverse just to flip things around as well. So now if we shove all this stuff together, and look at our entire scene, we have these black lines, and then we'll have this white light still. So it's a little bit closer. This gaps are just a bit more like that. We could also think if we just have another kind of ceiling area. Whoops. Let's reverse. Should have just done this reverse normal at the start. That should probably be a little bit cleaner, I think. Oh man, my drag and drop didn't like that. All right, so we'll move this stuff to happen at the start. And then I think maybe just transform is the best one to use here. We'll make the Z a little bit bigger with both our Z and X. Trying to think what the best way is to do this. We need this kind of above where our light is. Okay, we should be good with it. Let's try it. So I think with redshift, if we just make the light double-sided, it will look a little bit more normal. Maybe our light overall is just a bit. I feel like overall our maybe their specular is a bit sharper. Or it might be the Fresnel or something like that. So I reduce the roughness here to get a kind of sharper spec hit. And then the Fresnel, I think the IOR, like blending kind of between metal and rubber or something like that is kind of what this is doing. The higher you make that IOR, the more things kind of turn into a mirror or just a reflection. The lower you have it, like only the edges will reflect light, and stuff that's facing the camera doesn't reflect as much. It might be a combination of both of these. I think that's... We're getting more reflections. It's a little bit closer. Let's go back up the higher intensity light. And then I think with this thing, turn the lights out on them. Yeah, I don't know, just getting it closer to almost touching that. That top area. I don't know. We would want to clean that stuff up, but we'll ignore it for right now. Let's just see what different parts of our animation look like. I think like our animation is going to be slower to play back because we're doing this height field conversion attribute transfer. So if you want just to visualize like the animation, we'll set up our display flags kind of like that. Then we can play back in real time, but render, we'll have our colors and post processes and stuff like that applied. So let's see what does this one look like? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe let me see. I don't know, blur is a little bit too linear or something maybe. Not safe for work. What isn't what's not safe for work? I think that one was not a good idea. Let's go back just to one sample count. Some of the colors. So let's play around with these. These things might be a bit too rough. Like too crunchy in some areas. This thing here is always bothering me as well, just like the way that these distributions work. Maybe our depth will go back down. It's a little hard to visualize that, so we need to. This way we kind of have stuff now where it's just like peeking out. I don't know, maybe some of the frames it's a bit closer to that. I think I might need to turn on my SOP updates. Maybe refresh the renderer. I don't know. Still doesn't. It looks like the color's updating, but the positions aren't moving. I don't think I have a jitter in the grain configure node. At one point I tried turning jitter on a little bit, like doing it as an extra node, but it seemed to make things blow up every once in a while. Somehow my simulation started playing. It can be nice though to get rid of that stepping. It might also just like on the Twitch compression, the screen compression might be blowing that up a little bit too. But oh, okay, there it is. Yeah, we could try that. Let's see what happens. Seems to be a lot of iterations that I is wanting to do. All right, so now we have, I guess it's a lot nicer. It's like a fuzzier, easier on the eyes to look at. Look at that. That was it. I think you spotted it perfectly, Alex. Yeah, I think it's a lot closer to where they were now. It might be maybe a little bit. I don't know, maybe we'll try like 0.5 and see what happens. We're slowly moving closer to where they were, making progress. So I think their jitter, they must be doing like a lot of repetitions of slowly separating things. That's why it's so slow. Yeah, I don't know, now we still have some big lines, like some aliasing. I think this jitter is a good idea. So we'll see how this looks. Then I'm just gonna play around with a few different, I'm gonna stop the rendering process. And then we'll just play around with a couple different noise ideas to supply the motion of things and just see what happens. Yeah, so I think this is better. I don't know how these are still getting a lot of like bounce lighting. It might just be from the walls or something. If their stuff is going to I don't know if they're just doing it in the controls, like just that black crush or something might be more of what they're doing. Yeah, I don't know. It's just need to sit down in front of Houdini for enough time and it will come. So let's just save this with these render and the jitter settings and stuff. I'll go up to version 5. I'm just gonna grab the height field nodes, drag them over. So it looks like for whatever reason it was trying to do the jitter again. Gonna turn off the rest of our environment. We'll just go back into a less distractions or whatever. So another thing I was thinking is like, so there's geometric shapes, but then at the end they start getting these bigger distortions or ripples or things like that. So like I set up at the at the start of this stream, we could do a sine wave based off of that X to get like ripples that were aligned to them. Go back to this height field wrangle. I think there's also the height field VOP, maybe? I don't know if you guys prefer one over the other. Maybe we'll set this one up. So the hell is going on here? I don't know why they set it up like this. You need to export. So this reads in the current height value, and then with this one, we're setting it. So it's kind of like if you use the shaders or stuff like that, all these height field VOPs and stuff work in the same way. So one thing we can do is like sine, but instead of doing the sine function based off of like the distance to the X or to the shape to get them aligned with that, if we just do a coordinate, like an axis. So we could do Z and then add or modulate the height based on that. So that gives us basically a sine wave that would go on forever along this axis. So if you think back to your mathematic, your days in geometry class, it's kind of hard to see. Let me go into, none of these are working that well. If I convert this to convert height field to polygons, this is what I'm talking about. So we have the sine function. If you use graphing calculators or whatever, that's basically what we've set up here. So we're just outputting the value as a height value instead that's pushing things towards the camera. We can add motion to this sine wave if we just increment it by the frame. Then we're moving things along. Things are going too fast, I'll usually just switch from frame to time. So this is in seconds, whereas frame is like just goes up one number every frame. So the seconds takes 24 frames to go up with one number. Let's go back into our regular view. Sometimes that display gets messed up a little bit. So this is how you could make some more like simple waves or stuff like that. If you want to add some turbulence or distortions or whatever to these ridges so that they aren't completely straight or flat or whatever, you can just distort the input like point position. So if we make a noise and add it to the position, before all of our other steps. Then we get this kind of crinkly, crumpled paper look or something like that. Then the reason why this stuff is happening, I think, is because it's like reaching the peak or the valley of the wave. So it might be trying to push it like in this direction, which the height field is just a two-dimensional thing. So we want to just dial this down in roughness and dial down the frequency, and then increase the amplitude. So now we just have these that aren't perfectly lined up, like they're going a little bit too high. Now they're just a little bit more natural, like the way that they're moving. I don't know, it seems like they had these weren't complete lines or bars or whatever, basically. They were more, it's like more organic, I guess, or something. Now we just have things that are traveling like in different directions and stuff like that. So it's pretty, hopefully it's pretty somewhat straightforward there. You can also just do other kind of stuff, like instead of this sign, we can do another noise. So now you have like this kind of somewhat interesting pattern. So the sine gives you a regular gradual slope, and then this noise will basically give you a higher frequency value or whatever. Like if you go down and around and stuff, you start to get like closer to what the sine was doing. Kind of like this. Now we're closer to where the sine was, but you can basically use this to start to get some, I don't know, more natural, like a mineral or something, like the veins going through a rock, or I don't know what it could be. Let's try some different. You could just get different kind of abstract patterns or flows or stuff like that. Then there's also this ocean spectrum and all of this ocean stuff that's pretty useful. I think this one, you can have it output height fields or create height fields. Basically this ocean evaluate and ocean spectrum, you need both of them. I think you can wire it up like this. If you had a grid or you wanted to distort geometry with it, you could plug it into this input. With my height field here, I just need to change, I'm just looking at the settings of it. So we're doing 30 by 30. That might be a little bit low of a resolution. This will just give you like a regular kind of ocean look. You can increase this resolution to get more detail. This is kind of like two different versions of height fields or whatever. So this resolution exponent chooses how big the spectrum is. And then this one down here is what we're outputting things at. So we're good in this case. If we have this resolution exponent too low, you can see we start to see like the blocks or the artifacts or whatever. Then depending on our settings, like we might want to get a little bit closer to what they had, just getting rid of like some of the high frequency stuff. This min wavelength can like filter out that stuff. It's kind of just like a blur. So you start to get closer to like a stylized wave. They have a bunch of controls. All of this stuff is pretty straightforward the way that it's named, like directional movement. That can change the angle or the direction. This is like goes from 0 to 360 in degrees. Maybe amplitude is a little bit too high. So this way, it might be, I don't know, you get a little bit closer to some of that stuff. And then all this height field, I think we're stuck with it working like y is the up vector. So we would just need to transform this to be aligned the other way. So just do that with 90 and 90. I think we need to use the height field transform. Otherwise those values won't get properly looks maybe this would, I think this is the way to do it. That height field won't height field transform won't let you rotate. It's just for scaling. I think it was just the viewport gets a little bit scuffed sometimes when you're doing too many like manipulations to the height field. So now, where did this one go? Vanished. The hell is going on? Maybe it's just my lighting or something like that. Let me just make sure we're all kind of in the same area. So I think just this transform of -1. And then we're good. So we can go ahead and just try our same DOP kind of setup here. I'm just going to make this value a little bit higher so that we're working a little bit more quickly. Yeah, so I don't know, it might be my forces have never been that close to I feel like they're doing something a little bit different. It might be constraints, like if you kind of tell these particles to target a certain position instead of doing this more like physically based way that I'm doing things right now. I was thinking maybe like the ones closest to the bottom of this layer, they're like setting the positions of these grains, and then the ones on the surface are like farther from it. Maybe they're just letting them slide around, but I'm not 100% certain. Because then you would get away, then you would stop like the collision from being revealed at times. So I'm going to go higher with this amplitude. Might be a bit too too wild there. Let's see what happens here. This just seems like whatever I do, I'm not getting the same kind of depth or like contrast that that they had in terms of preserving, I don't know, highlights and shadows and stuff like that. So this stuff I'm definitely too fast. You just change the time scale on this ocean, which is like a global remapping of time or whatever. There's also with the sine waves and stuff like that, like we would just multiply the time by a constant number to make it slower or faster. These attributes is definitely the biggest stumbling block, or I don't know. Once you figure out and are comfortable working with attributes, then the rest of Houdini starts to become more approachable, I would say. I don't know. So I don't know about this gravity. Maybe just like something close to 9 was the right value. Still having some holes poked through, but let's just see what happens. So let's just increase extrude the thickness of particles again. It's like a lazy way to fix it, I feel like. Oof, I shouldn't have done that. I tried the middle mouse button on my thing to see how many particles I had, but I did it. I shouldn't have done it. We had like 250,000, but things are still going a little slow. Might be my height field. Like if we this ripples and stuff, we don't need it too detailed. So I think just going down to like 32 in terms of resolution. Just has to do the jitter is the most expensive step. We're just doing that one time. So I don't know, maybe that made it a little bit quicker. This shot right here is one of the cooler ones, I think, where the camera's like doing the rotation with as it's tracking kind of through the waves or whatever. Super cool. So it looks like we filled all the gaps. The stuff is sticking out quite a bit. Let's just grab this other stuff and see if it's still, see how well it holds up. The blur color process. So it looks like the waves, the ocean has a lot of curvature. Just render away and see what happens. We have something that's cool, but I think our depth value is off. We need, I can just visualize it here. So if I do copy to points, now we'll be able to judge this more easily. Procedural and non-procedural assets, what's the difference? You hear that about asking people modeling in Houdini. I'm assuming that destructive would be considered non-procedural. Yeah, so basically destructive is one way to think about it. I mean, if you're talking about an asset, it's less about destructible, more about procedural. Like destructible is kind of like what people say with working in Photoshop, where like this node tree here is a non-destructive workflow where I could go up and change the resolution of the height field and everything else still works and runs the same. Then with assets, like a procedural asset is something that has controls or parameters on it. So if you have like a vehicle, it depends on how procedural it is, like the options, but you change the color, you change the tires, you could change the window tint, you would change maybe even the like build of the car, like it could be a 4-door or a 2-door sedan. That's more of what people mean by a procedural asset. Like a lot of the tutorials with making buildings and stuff like that, you can change the number of stories that the building has. You can change the height of the story depending on how the height of the floor, depending on how well the person built it out. Like you can even change the architectural style of like a Greek building to traditional, I don't know, like modern glass windows or something. So that's what they mean by a procedural asset, is like having the sliders and stuff like that, essentially. Instead of a non-procedural asset would just be like a model you downloaded off of TurboSquid. It just has, yeah, you build those, you kind of build the tools. You don't need to use Python. So I don't know, some of the motion is pretty cool here, but I'm still getting those gaps everywhere. You don't necessarily need to trying to think. So like anything that you have in your node window can be an asset. I don't know what a easy or good example is. So maybe if I just have like a sphere, like that. So let's say I want to have something that's always like turning this into pipes. Maybe I would do polywire. And maybe I also want like to control the spacing of these pipes with the target size. So you have like two controls of radius and resolution. So I just highlight both of those nodes and press Shift and C. And then I have my subnetwork. And then this is the starting point that people use for to make these assets. So if I right click on it and then do, I just go up here and click on the gear, edit parameter interface, then I'm changing the control panel or the parameters of it. Usually I grab all of these and just turn them invisible. That's just for labeling like what text pops up when you hover over the inputs. And then if I allow linking parameters from outside this subnet, you can go in and get some of these parameters. So I was saying I was changing the target size, so I can drag and drop that parameter. And then the wire radius. And maybe you want, my drag and drop is still a little bit borked. I think it's definitely my doing OBS at the same time or something. All right, so it worked. Maybe like divisions and segments. cursed myself with my OBS got mad at me and was like, don't let his drag and drop work again. So I hit apply, and then you see I have expressions that are basically saying go to the parent parameter. You probably don't want those flags to be different like that. So now if I go up here, I kind of have what you could call like a procedural asset, where any model I plug this into, I have these different parameters to make wireframes of. So it works with a sphere, but any model you give it, you can do this routine with it, apply that style or whatever. So it's kind of like you're writing a little program, but you don't need to know Python. Sometimes you use Python within these tools. But yeah, for world building, like that's one of the pretty popular. I don't want to do that. But now if I just did create digital asset, then it would make this OTL HDA file, depending on your naming scheme or whatever. So then it's an external thing. With the Houdini toolkit, you can use it within other softwares like Maya or Unity. So that's where all the tool building and stuff like that becomes more useful. I haven't done a ton of that stuff because I've always done more effects-based things where it's like sometimes you have tools that help you with DOPs or forces and things like that, but it's a little less like procedural modeling or whatever of stuff that I've always done. So let's try this. We changed our fall off. It looks like my brightness is just a little bit too like blown out now. So I think with my curvature values, because the ocean surface got more curvature, I started like clipping too much or blowing things out. So this whole, I think my blur, it's because I changed the resolution, things got a little bit wonky as well. I might want to do subdivide. You have to be a little bit careful with the curvature stuff because it is, I think it's all dependent on like the edge length and stuff like that. So I'm just trying to get more lines, like visibly, a pattern that's a little bit more visible, I guess. I think maybe these noises, I don't know, might be my depth. I don't know, I think my shape and stuff is just a little too messed up as well. So it's also cool just burying the colors and having them bleed through like that or whatever. It's like when it's powering up or something. But yeah, this stuff is a bit, I mean, it doesn't look that bad, but it's definitely different than their reference. But yeah, this is probably where I'll leave it today. So we started with our mess, did a kind of refinement phase to work in the proper direction and access and space and everything. The jitter that Alex mentioned, that was a big help to get this looking more natural. And then just started looking into the custom noises. But I think the method I was using to draw those X's was just, that was a bit of a problem. Like, I was always getting those curves. I was always getting rounded edges and stuff there where that should always be flat. And then the way that this stuff is like going together, like the method I set up to do it would never produce that kind of intersection. I think they just have geometries that are like individually shearing through each other or something. But yeah, I'll just save this again. We did some render improvements as well. The shader, sorted that out a little bit better. I just saved it. What the hell is going on? Yeah, so I'll probably leave it here today. Tomorrow we'll be back again, same time. I don't know what we'll do. Figure it out later. It might be more of this, or I might do some stuff with like the newer version of Houdini, like the 0.499 builds or whatever. Check out that they have a new path deform node, so I might check that out. We'll see. All right, guys, have a good rest of your Saturday, evening, day, morning, wherever you are. Take it easy.